I always considered my marriage to be solid. Emily and I met during our sophomore year of college. We shared a cramped dorm room, late-night study sessions, and dreams of what our lives would look like after graduation. We quickly became inseparable, bonded by the common experience of trying to find our place in the world. After years of ups and downs, we tied the knot, full of hope and excitement for our future together. Life after college was a whirlwind of new responsibilities. We settled into a cozy apartment, both juggling demanding jobs, me as a software developer and Emily as a marketing coordinator at a growing tech firm. She was ambitious, always striving to climb the corporate ladder. I admired her dedication and often found myself supporting her long hours, cheering her on as she took on more significant projects. But as time went on, I started to notice subtle changes in Emily. She became increasingly busy, often staying late at work and coming home exhausted. Initially, I attributed it to the pressures of her job. I would tell myself that it was just a phase. Every career had its demanding moments. I even tried to lighten the mood with small surprises, like cooking her favorite meal or planning weekend getaways, hoping to remind her of the joy we once shared. Despite my efforts, the distance between us grew. Emily started to spend more time on her phone, frequently laughing at messages I couldn't see. I brushed it off, telling myself it was probably group chats with co-workers or friends. I wanted to trust her completely. After all, we had built a life together based on mutual love and respect. One evening, I came home early, excited to surprise her with dinner. As I stepped through the door, I noticed the living room was dark, the only light coming from the dim glow of the kitchen. I found Emily sitting at the table, her laptop open, engrossed in something that seemed to require her full attention. I stood there for a moment, watching her, trying to read her expression. "Hey, babe. I'm home," I called out, forcing a cheerful tone into my voice. She jumped, quickly minimizing the window on her screen. "Oh. I didn't hear you come in. Just working on some stuff for a big presentation tomorrow." The slight hesitation in her voice struck me, but I shrugged it off. We had both worked late before, and I knew how stressful those last-minute preparations could be. I attempted to lighten the mood, and we spent the evening together, cooking, laughing, and reminiscing about our early days. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The nagging doubt began to creep in, whispering in the back of my mind, telling me to pay closer attention. I tried to push it aside, convincing myself that I was just being paranoid. After all, we had weathered so many storms together, surely this was just a rough patch. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my wife and our marriage. As the weeks went by, my heart would soon be tested in ways I could never have anticipated. And the more I tried to ignore the signs, the more the truth would claw its way to the surface, shattering my perception of our seemingly perfect life. Chapter 2: Cracks in the Facade. As the days turned into weeks, the unease in my chest grew heavier. Emily continued to work late, often missing dinner and returning home exhausted and distant. I did my best to stay supportive, reminding myself that every relationship went through rough patches, especially when one partner was ambitious and career-driven. But with each passing day, I found myself increasingly aware of the small changes: the late-night texts, the occasional perfume scent lingering on her clothes, and the way she seemed to lose herself in her phone whenever I walked into the room. One Friday evening, I decided to surprise Emily with a dinner reservation at her favorite restaurant, hoping to rekindle some of the spark we had lost. As I was getting ready, I couldn't help but check her work schedule on her company's shared calendar, something I had never done before, but curiosity gnawed at me. That's when I saw it, an entry for an after-work happy hour with her co-workers. My stomach dropped. The event was scheduled for the same day as our dinner. I felt a mixture of anger and betrayal rising within me. How could she prioritize a work event over us? I quickly texted her, asking if she would still be able to make it to dinner. The minutes felt like hours as I waited for her response. Finally, she replied, saying she'd try her best to come but that she might be late. That evening, I arrived at the restaurant, a pit in my stomach. I ordered a drink and tried to enjoy the ambience, but my mind was racing. I stared at my phone, hoping to see a message from her saying she was on her way. As I watched the minutes tick by, I felt a knot tightening in my chest. After an hour, she texted me, "Sorry, babe. I'm still at the happy hour. I'll come home as soon as I can." I felt a mix of disappointment and anger bubbling to the surface. I finished my drink and left the restaurant, my mind swirling with possibilities. I drove home in silence, battling my thoughts. Maybe I was being unreasonable. After all, she was working hard, and I should be supportive. Yet, something inside me whispered that I was missing something important. When I got home, I found Emily curled up on the couch, her hair messy and her eyes glassy from the long day. "Hey, sorry I'm late," she said, a hint of guilt in her voice. "I lost track of time. Work has been crazy lately." I forced a smile, wanting to be understanding. "It's okay. I just wanted to see you. Maybe we can order something in," I suggested, trying to ease the tension. As we settled in for the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I asked her about the happy hour, trying to sound casual. "How was it? Did you have fun?" Emily hesitated, a flicker of something crossing her face. Was it guilt? "It was fine. Just a few co-workers hanging out. Nothing major." She quickly changed the subject, asking me about my day. But the nagging feeling in my gut persisted, and I couldn't help but notice how easily she deflected my questions. As the days passed, I became increasingly consumed by my suspicions. I decided to investigate. I started by checking her social media accounts, scrolling through her posts and pictures. Everything seemed normal until I stumbled upon a photo tagged by one of her co-workers. It was a group picture taken at the happy hour. Emily looked radiant, laughing, her eyes sparkling, and standing closely next to a man I didn't recognize. The caption read, "Great night with the best team. Can't wait to celebrate more successes together." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I didn't recognize the man, but something about the way they stood together, their ease with one another, made my heart race with jealousy and dread. I clicked on his profile, and my stomach sank as I realized he was one of the new hires, a charming, handsome guy in his late 20s. As I sat there staring at the screen, a sickening thought crossed my mind: what if this was more than just friendship? What if there was something deeper? I tried to shake it off, reminding myself that I was being paranoid. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it grew with every passing moment. That night, as I lay in bed next to Emily, I felt more alone than ever. The silence between us grew deafening. I could sense the walls closing in, and I knew that the calm I had once felt was just the eye of the storm. The cracks in our marriage were widening, and soon I would have to confront the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Chapter 3, Unearthing the Truth. The following week was a blur of tension and unspoken words. I tried to maintain a facade of normalcy, but it was exhausting. Every time I looked at Emily, I felt the weight of my suspicions pressing down on me. It was difficult to engage in conversations that felt forced and strained, knowing that something was lurking beneath the surface. One evening, I decided to confront my fears head-on. I had spent the entire day researching her co-worker, Mark. I learned he was a charismatic individual who had joined the company around the same time Emily started putting in those late hours. He seemed to have a reputation for being friendly and outgoing, but something about that only heightened my unease. That night, I found Emily sitting on the couch, her laptop open as she worked on another project. The soft glow of the screen illuminated her face, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was staring at a stranger. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to say. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked up, surprised but intrigued. "Sure, what's up?" I hesitated, my heart racing as I tried to gauge her expression. "I've been feeling off lately. I can't help but notice how much time you spend at work, especially with Mark. I mean, is there something going on between you two?" Her face fell, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. She quickly masked it with a smile, but it felt forced. "Come on, babe. You know I'm just focused on my career. Mark's just a co-worker. We're friends, that's it." "Friends?" I echoed, my voice rising slightly. "It feels like there's more to it. You're always texting him, and it seems like every time I ask about work, you deflect. I need you to be honest with me, Emily." She sighed, running a hand through her hair in frustration. "You're being paranoid. It's just work. You're making a big deal out of nothing." But I could see her defensiveness rising, and the tension in the room was palpable. "It's not just nothing if it's affecting our relationship. I miss you, and I feel like you're pulling away. Can't you see that?" Emily's expression softened for a moment, but then it hardened again. "You know how demanding my job is. I've been under a lot of pressure lately. I thought you understood." I nodded, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I do understand, but I also need you to understand where I'm coming from. I love you, and I want to feel connected again. We need to communicate better." She looked down, and I could see the internal battle raging within her. "I'll try," she finally said, her voice barely audible. "But you have to trust me." "I want to trust you," I replied, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. "But trust is built on honesty, and right now, I feel like there's a wall between us." As we settled into silence, I couldn't shake the feeling that the conversation had only scratched the surface. I wanted to believe her, but the nagging doubt in my mind wouldn't let go. In the days that followed, I became more vigilant. I tried to give Emily the space she claimed she needed while also looking for signs that would either validate or dispel my fears. I knew I was treading dangerous waters, but I felt compelled to protect what we had built together. One afternoon, as I was working from home, I heard Emily come in early. I felt a rush of hope that maybe she was trying to make an effort. I headed to the living room to greet her, but as I turned the corner, I froze. There she was, standing by the window, her phone in hand, her face illuminated by the soft light of the late afternoon sun. She was laughing at something on the screen, a genuine smile spread across her face. But then, in a flash, her expression shifted to one of panic as she caught my gaze. I watched as she quickly tucked her phone away, the sudden shift in her demeanor sending a chill down my spine. "Hey. I didn't see you there," she said, her voice too cheerful, almost rehearsed. "Hey," I replied, trying to remain calm despite the storm brewing inside me. "What's so funny?" "Oh, just a meme from one of my friends," she said, averting her eyes. I could feel my heart racing, and a wave of frustration washed over me. I knew she was hiding something. "Really? You know I'd love to see it, right?" For a moment, she hesitated, her eyes darting away as if searching for an escape. "Maybe later," she replied, her voice wavering. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to tread lightly. "Okay, but can we talk about everything else? I feel like we're just avoiding the issue." Emily sighed, the weight of my words settling in. "You're right. Let's just have dinner first, and then we can talk." As we prepared dinner together, the air was thick with unspoken words. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were standing on the precipice of something life-changing. I desperately wanted to believe in our love, but the shadows of doubt loomed larger with every passing day. After dinner, I took a deep breath, determined to dig deeper. Emily, please just be honest with me. I can't keep feeling like this. I need to know if there's something more going on with you and Mark. She looked at me, her eyes filled with emotion. I promise you, there's nothing. But I can see that you're struggling, and I want to help you through it. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, but I also sensed a flicker of fear behind her facade. Then let's work on this together, I urged. Let's rebuild that trust. As she nodded, I felt a small glimmer of hope. But deep down, I knew that the road ahead would be treacherous. With the truth lurking just beneath the surface, it was only a matter of time before the storm would finally break. Chapter 4, The Breaking Point. The following weeks were a tumultuous blend of hope and despair. Emily and I tried to reconnect, but the underlying tension remained. We shared dinners and moments of laughter, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. Every time she received a message or a phone call, my heart would race, my mind spiraling into a whirlwind of suspicion. I began to feel like I was walking a tightrope, desperately trying to balance between trusting my wife and my instinct that something was terribly wrong. One night, while Emily was in the shower, I sat in the living room, my mind racing. I knew I had to confront the situation head-on. I couldn't go on living in this limbo, filled with doubt and anxiety. As I sat there, I decided that I needed more clarity, even if it meant risking everything. I pulled out my phone and opened Emily's social media accounts again. I hesitated for a moment, feeling like I was crossing a line, but the desperation pushed me forward. Scrolling through her messages, I stumbled upon a conversation between Emily and Mark. My heart pounded in my chest as I read their exchanges. At first, they were harmless funny memes and work-related banter. But as I scrolled deeper, my stomach twisted as I discovered messages that felt far too intimate. Compliments about her appearance, inside jokes that only the two of them shared, and comments that hinted at a connection beyond mere friendship. Wish you were here. Work is so boring without you. Mark had sent one afternoon. Emily had replied, same. You make the long hours more bearable. Can't wait to celebrate our project's success together. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I read the banter continue, with flirty emojis peppered throughout. My heart sank further with every line, and I could feel the walls closing in. I realized that I had been right all along. There was something more, and it felt like a betrayal that cut deep. Just as I was about to put the phone down, one message caught my eye: let's grab drinks after work next week. Just us. I want to celebrate you getting that promotion. My blood ran cold. I couldn't breathe. I felt like the ground had been pulled from under me. This was it. My worst fears had come to life. I knew I had to confront her, but I wasn't sure how to approach it. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but a small voice in my head urged me to remain calm. When Emily emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, I was still sitting on the couch, the weight of what I had read heavy on my heart. She looked at me, surprised by my silence. Hey, everything okay? I took a deep breath, trying to collect my thoughts. Can we talk? Her face fell slightly, and I could see the apprehension in her eyes. Sure, what's on your mind? I hesitated for a moment, weighing my words carefully. I found some messages on your phone, and I need to know the truth. Is there something going on with you and Mark? Emily's face went pale, and for a split second, I saw genuine fear flash across her features. What messages? She asked, her voice shaking. The ones where you're making plans to meet up for drinks, I replied, trying to keep my tone steady despite the storm raging inside me. I thought we were going to be honest with each other. I can't keep feeling like I'm the only one who cares about our marriage. She stood frozen for a moment, and then the reality of the situation seemed to crash over her. I can explain, she stammered, her eyes darting as if searching for an escape. Explain what? I demanded, frustration boiling over. Explain how you're planning secret drinks with a coworker while I'm at home wondering what's wrong with us? This isn't just work anymore, Emily. It feels like you're hiding something important from me. Tears welled up in her eyes, and I could see the battle waging within her. It's not what you think, she insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. We've just been working closely on this project, and I didn't want to bring it home. Didn't want to bring it home. I scoffed, incredulity flooding my voice. You think this is just about work? It's not. It feels like you're emotionally involved with him, and I need to know the truth. Emily's composure finally cracked. I never meant for it to get this complicated, she cried, her voice trembling. I didn't think you'd react this way. I swear, it started as just friends, and I thought I could manage it. But then everything changed. What changed? I pressed, desperate for clarity. Did you fall for him? Is that what you're saying? She hesitated, her expression a mix of shame and fear. I don't know. Maybe I got caught up in the excitement. He makes me feel valued, and I guess I started to enjoy the attention. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. So you're saying you've been emotionally cheating on me? Emily broke down in tears. I didn't want it to happen. I was feeling lost, and Mark was there. But it's not what you think. I love you. Love me. I echoed, my voice laced with disbelief. You're planning drinks with him and texting him like you share something special, and you're telling me you love me? How does that make any sense? I made a mistake. I thought I could control it, she sobbed, wiping her tears with trembling hands. At that moment, everything I thought I knew about my marriage shattered around me. The laughter, the inside jokes, the dreams we had built together, all of it felt like a lie. I wanted to comfort her, but the pain of her betrayal ran too deep. I can't do this, I said, my voice breaking as I stood up. I need some time to think. As I walked out of the room, I could feel her gaze following me, but I didn't look back. I needed to process everything, to figure out how to move forward. My heart felt heavy, and the weight of her choices hung in the air like a suffocating fog. I stepped out into the cool night, the air crisp against my skin as I tried to catch my breath. I couldn't shake the feeling that our entire life had been turned upside down. I wandered aimlessly, each step echoing with the betrayal I never thought I would face. The pain was raw, but I knew one thing for certain, this was only the beginning of a fight for the truth and perhaps for the future of my marriage. Chapter 5, The Aftermath. The night air was sharp and stung my lungs as I wandered through the quiet streets, each step heavy with the weight of my emotions. I felt lost, like a ship adrift in a storm, and every memory of Emily flashed before me, the laughter we shared, the dreams we had built, and now, this heart-wrenching betrayal. I couldn't comprehend how we had spiraled into this chaos so quickly. After a couple of hours of walking, I found myself at a nearby park. I sat on a bench, staring at the distant lights flickering in the dark, trying to make sense of everything. I pulled out my phone, contemplating calling a friend for support, but the thought of talking about my shattered world felt overwhelming. I didn't want to admit to anyone how fragile my marriage had become. As I sat there in silence, the reality of what had happened sunk in deeper. Emily's confession echoed in my mind. I was feeling lost. I had been so focused on my work, my routine, that I hadn't noticed the emotional distance growing between us. But I had never expected her to seek comfort elsewhere. Eventually, I decided to head home. The drive back felt surreal, as if I were moving through a dream. When I walked through the door, the apartment felt empty, echoing the turmoil in my heart. Emily was sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying, looking small and fragile. I could see she had been waiting for me, and part of me wanted to comfort her, but I knew we needed to address the truth first. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice steady but tinged with sadness. She nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. I'm so sorry for everything. I never wanted to hurt you. I don't know how it got to this point. I took a deep breath, feeling the ache in my chest intensify. You need to understand how betrayed I feel right now. I trusted you, Emily. You were my partner, my confidant. This hurts more than I can explain. I know, she whispered, her voice cracking. I never meant for it to happen. I got caught up in everything. Mark made me feel good about myself when I was feeling overwhelmed at work, and I didn't know how to pull back. But you didn't just get caught up in it, I pointed out, frustration bubbling to the surface. You made choices. You went out for drinks. You texted him like it was nothing. That's not just a mistake, that's a series of decisions that you made, and it hurts. I realize that now, she replied, her voice trembling. I can't take it back. I was foolish and scared, but I love you. I want to make this work. I shook my head, feeling a mix of anger and despair. But how can I trust you again? You've broken that trust, and it's going to take so much to rebuild it. I can't just forget what happened. It's not that simple. Emily reached out for my hand, but I instinctively pulled away. Please, let me explain. I was feeling so stressed with work and everything at home, and instead of turning to you, I turned to him. It was a mistake, but it didn't mean I love you any less. I want to make things right. As much as I wanted to believe her, I couldn't shake the feeling that our foundation had been irrevocably shaken. What does making things right even mean? I asked, my voice low and filled with pain. Are we just going to pretend like nothing happened? I need time to process this, and I'm not sure if I can just jump back into our life together. Take all the time you need, she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. I'll do whatever it takes to show you that I'm committed to us. I'll cut all ties with Mark. I promise. Her words felt like a small glimmer of hope, but the doubt lingered like a heavy cloud. I didn't want to push her away, but I was terrified of letting her in too quickly, only to be hurt again. I think we need to take a step back, I finally said, the weight of my decision hanging heavily in the air. Maybe some space would help us both think clearly about what we want. Emily's expression fell, her face crumpling with emotion. I understand, but it hurts so much. I never wanted it to come to this. I know, I replied softly. But right now, I think it's what we need. I need to figure out if I can trust you again and if I want to rebuild what we had. With that, I stepped back, creating a physical distance that mirrored the emotional gap between us. It felt like a wall was rising, but it was necessary. I didn't want to make any rash decisions that could lead to further heartbreak. Over the next few days, the silence in the apartment was palpable. We both went through the motions of daily life but avoided talking about the elephant in the room. I focused on work, trying to distract myself from the turmoil brewing within, while Emily busied herself with chores, her eyes often filled with a mixture of sorrow and regret. In moments of solitude, I grappled with my feelings. I knew I loved her, but trust had always been the foundation of our relationship, and that foundation had been shattered. I thought about the memories we had shared, the trips, the late-night talks, the dreams of building a life together. Could I really throw it all away because of a mistake? Or was this mistake indicative of deeper issues we hadn't addressed? I spent hours contemplating the nature of love and forgiveness. I knew that rebuilding trust would take time, patience, and genuine effort from both of us. But I also knew that I couldn't rush into reconciliation without understanding the depth of her actions and my own feelings. Then came the weekend, a time when I would usually look forward to spending time with Emily. Instead, I found myself alone in the apartment, the silence echoing around me. I grabbed my phone and texted a close friend, David, who had always been a pillar of support. Can we talk? I need to get out of my head for a bit. Within minutes, he replied, of course. Want to grab some coffee? I'll be there in 20. When he arrived, I could tell he sensed the heaviness in the air as I poured out the details of the past few weeks. I shared my fears, my heartache, and my confusion about what to do next. David listened intently, offering insights and support without judgment. It sounds like you're dealing with a lot, man, he said. It's okay to feel hurt and confused. Just remember that you don't have to make any decisions right away. Take your time to heal, and don't rush back into something that might not be right for you. I know, I replied, rubbing my temples in frustration. But I feel like I'm stuck in this limbo. I love her, but how do I get past this? David leaned back, considering my words. You both need to communicate openly, but it might help to set some boundaries while you figure things out. Maybe a couples therapist could help facilitate those conversations and guide you both through this process. I nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. That could be a good idea. I think we both want to make it work, but we just need the right tools. As our conversation continued, I began to feel lighter. It was a reminder that I wasn't alone in this struggle. I could lean on friends, seek guidance, and take the time I needed to heal. When I returned home later that evening, I found Emily sitting on the couch, her face buried in her hands. My heart ached at the sight of her, and I knew I had to confront the truth, both my feelings and the reality of our situation. Hey, I said softly, sitting beside her. I talked to David today. He suggested we consider couples therapy. I think it could help us navigate this. She looked up, her eyes wide with hope. Really? You think that would help? I do, I replied. But it's going to take work from both of us. We need to be open, honest, and willing to confront the pain we've caused each other. I need you to be committed to this process. I'm committed, she promised, her voice steadying. I never wanted to hurt you, and I want to make this right. I'll do whatever it takes. As we sat there together, the air between us felt charged with a mix of hope and uncertainty. It would be a long road ahead, filled with hard conversations and moments of vulnerability. But for the first time in a while, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps, with time and effort, we could rebuild what had been broken and emerge stronger on the other side. Chapter 6, The First Steps. The following week, Emily and I took the plunge and scheduled our first session with a couples therapist. I felt a whirlwind of emotions leading up to the appointment: nervousness, hope, and lingering doubt. It was one thing to talk about our problems, but facing them head-on with a stranger felt daunting. On the day of the session, I arrived at the therapist's office early. I sat in the waiting room, surrounded by the sound of rustling papers and distant voices. The walls were adorned with serene landscapes and inspirational quotes that felt like a cruel reminder of the chaos in my heart. When Emily arrived, her expression mirrored my own, anxious yet determined. We exchanged tentative smiles, both aware that this was a pivotal moment in our relationship. As we entered the therapist's office, I was struck by the calmness of the space. The therapist, Dr. Miller, greeted us with a warm smile and gestured for us to take a seat on the couch. She exuded a sense of understanding and compassion, which helped ease some of my tension. Thank you both for coming in today. I know this can be a difficult step, she said, her voice soothing. I'd like to start by hearing from each of you about what brought you here and what you hope to achieve through our sessions. Emily went first, her voice trembling as she spoke. I've made some terrible mistakes, and I know I've hurt my husband deeply. I want to be honest about what happened and rebuild the trust we once had. Dr. Miller nodded, encouraging her to continue. And how does that make you feel, both in terms of your relationship and personally? I feel like I've let him down, Emily replied, her eyes glistening with tears. I've been so focused on my work that I lost sight of what really matters. I want to make it right. Dr. Miller turned to me, her gaze inviting me to share. And what about you? I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. I feel shattered, I admitted. I loved and trusted Emily completely, and I thought we had a strong foundation. Learning about her affair turned my world upside down. I want to understand why it happened and if there's a way to rebuild what we had. Dr. Miller listened attentively, jotting down notes. It sounds like both of you are here because you genuinely want to work on your relationship. Acknowledging the pain and being willing to confront it is a crucial first step. As the session continued, Dr. Miller guided us through discussions about communication, boundaries, and emotional intimacy. She asked us to explore the underlying issues that had contributed to Emily's choices. Let's talk about the emotional distance you both mentioned, she suggested. What were the warning signs leading up to the affair? I glanced at Emily, searching for the right words. I guess I've been so wrapped up in my work and daily routine that I didn't notice how much we were drifting apart. We stopped prioritizing our time together. Emily nodded, her expression filled with regret. I thought I was managing everything, but I was drowning in stress. Instead of reaching out to you, I found comfort in someone else, and it spiraled from there. Dr. Miller encouraged us to dig deeper. It's important to understand that both of you have played a role in the emotional distance. Recognizing that can help you move forward. By the end of the session, I felt a mix of exhaustion and relief. The act of talking openly about our struggles was cathartic, but it also brought to light the raw, painful realities of our relationship. As we left the office, Emily took my hand, her fingers intertwining with mine. "Thank you for doing this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It means so much to me that we're trying." I squeezed her hand, appreciating the gesture but still feeling guarded. It's just the first step. We have a long way to go. In the days that followed, our sessions continued, each one peeling back layers of our relationship and exposing the raw truths beneath. We learned to communicate more openly, but it was difficult to face the uncomfortable moments. Each session felt like a step into uncharted territory, filled with both fear and hope. One evening after a particularly intense session, we sat on the couch together, both exhausted from the emotional toll. "Do you think we're making progress?" Emily asked, her voice soft. "I hope so," I replied, feeling the weight of her gaze. "But it's going to take time, and we have to be patient with each other." "I'm willing to do whatever it takes," she said, determination shining in her eyes. "I want to earn back your trust." I nodded, appreciating her sincerity, but the doubt lingered in the back of my mind. It's not just about trust. We have to rebuild our connection. I need to feel like we're a team again. Emily looked down, her expression filled with vulnerability. "I know I messed up, and I want to show you that I can be that partner again. Maybe we can set some boundaries moving forward, like checking in with each other more often and making time for date nights." I felt a flicker of hope. That sounds like a good start. I think prioritizing each other will help us reconnect. We began to implement small changes in our daily lives. We scheduled regular date nights, took short walks together, and made an effort to talk about our days. Slowly, the laughter returned to our home, albeit cautiously, and I could feel the ice between us starting to melt. But while the moments of joy were welcome, the shadows of betrayal still lingered. I often found myself battling insecurities that resurfaced during quiet moments. I had no idea if I could ever fully trust Emily again, and that uncertainty nagged at me. One night, as we lay in bed, I turned to her, my voice barely above a whisper. "Do you ever think about Mark?" Emily's body tensed beside me, and I could feel the atmosphere shift. "I do," she admitted. "I think about how I let myself get caught up in that situation. I'm so ashamed." I felt a pang in my chest. "Do you still have feelings for him?" "No," she replied firmly. What we had was a mistake. It was a moment of weakness. I realized that I love you and want to be with you. I don't want to lose what we have. I nodded, still feeling conflicted. I want to believe you, but it's hard. The memories of what happened are still fresh, and I can't just forget. I know, she said, her voice filled with emotion. I don't expect you to forget. But I promise I'll do everything I can to make it right. You are my priority. As I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I knew we were at a crossroads. The journey ahead would be long and filled with challenges, but if we truly committed to healing and rebuilding our love, perhaps there was a chance we could emerge stronger than before. For now, all I could do was take it one day at a time, navigating the complexities of our relationship while clinging to the hope that we could find our way back to each other. Chapter 7, Rebuilding Trust. As the weeks rolled into months, our sessions with Dr. Miller became a vital part of our routine. Each week, we would sit in her cozy office, pouring our hearts out while she guided us through the complexities of our relationship. It was during these sessions that I began to grasp the depth of our struggles, how the small cracks had formed over time, and how easy it had been for those cracks to turn into a chasm. One evening after a particularly intense session, I returned home feeling drained but oddly hopeful. Emily was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. The aroma of garlic and herbs filled the air, a stark contrast to the emotional heaviness we had been navigating. As I entered, she looked up and smiled, a tentative yet genuine smile. "How was the session?" she asked, stirring a pot on the stove. "It was good," I replied, leaning against the counter. "We talked a lot about how to rebuild trust and the importance of transparency. Did anything in particular resonate with you?" I thought for a moment. Dr. Miller emphasized that trust is built in small moments, in consistency. It's not just about grand gestures but about showing up every day and being there for each other. Emily nodded, her expression serious. "I want to be that for you. I know I've let you down, but I'm committed to rebuilding that trust. Can we talk about what that looks like?" I suggested. "What small steps can we take to make sure we're both on the same page?" Emily put down the spoon and turned to face me, her expression earnest. "Maybe we can start with more open communication. Let's check in with each other every evening, ask how our day was, and really listen. I also think we should share our feelings more, even if it's uncomfortable." "I like that idea," I said, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. "And I think we should be more transparent about our schedules. I don't want to feel left in the dark about where you are or who you're with." "Absolutely," she replied, her eyes brightening. "I'll share my work calendar with you, and we can plan our time together better. I want you to feel secure." As we discussed our plans, I felt a sense of warmth return to the kitchen. It wasn't a fix-all, but it was a step in the right direction, a sign that we were both willing to put in the effort to heal. That weekend, we decided to go on our first date night since everything had happened. We chose a local Italian restaurant that had been one of our favorites. As we arrived, I felt a flutter of excitement mixed with anxiety. Would this night be an enjoyable escape, or would the weight of our past hang over us? As we settled into our booth, I looked around, taking in the familiar ambience, the soft music, the clinking of glasses, and the chatter of other couples. For a moment, I felt like we were just two people on a date, free from the shadows of our recent history. Over dinner, we talked about everything and nothing, shared memories, favorite movies, and dreams for the future. Laughter bubbled between us, and I felt the tension in my chest begin to ease. But just as I started to relax, I felt a flicker of insecurity. "Do you think about Mark often?" I asked, my voice low. Emily paused, her smile fading for a moment. "Sometimes. But it's mostly about the regret and the pain of what I did. I think about how I hurt you and how I never want to feel that way again." I nodded, grateful for her honesty. I guess I just wonder how we can move forward when that's still in the air. We can talk about it, she suggested. I want you to be able to express your feelings, even the hard ones. And I want to reassure you that my focus is on us now. I'm committed to making this work. By the end of the night, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Maybe we could find our way back to each other, brick by brick, as long as we remained open and honest about our feelings. Over the next few weeks, we kept our promise to check in with each other. We shared our highs and lows, and slowly but surely, I began to feel more secure in our relationship. I even noticed that Emily was making a conscious effort to be present and attentive, something I had craved for so long. However, just as I was starting to believe that we were making significant progress, the shadows of doubt crept back in. One evening, while Emily was in the shower, I heard her phone buzz on the counter. Curiosity gnawed at me, and I fought the urge to look at it. But the thought of her communicating with Mark, even in the smallest way, made my heart race with anxiety. After a few minutes of internal debate, I picked up her phone, my hands shaking slightly. As I swiped the screen to unlock it, I was hit with a wave of guilt. I had promised to trust her, and yet here I was, violating that trust in a desperate attempt to soothe my own insecurities. But I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. As I opened her messages, I felt a rush of relief when I saw only texts from friends and family. But just as I was about to put the phone down, I noticed a thread of messages that seemed out of place. It was a conversation with a coworker about a project at work, innocent enough, but it included a few jokes that felt flirtatious. My heart sank, and I could feel a lump forming in my throat. What did this mean? Had she truly moved on, or was this another form of emotional infidelity? Emily emerged from the shower, and I quickly put the phone back down, trying to mask my turmoil. She noticed my tense posture and approached me with concern. "Hey, are you okay?" "I'm fine," I replied too quickly, but I could feel my heart racing. "Really?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "You look a bit pale." I hesitated, torn between wanting to share my feelings and the fear of reigniting old wounds. But as I looked into her eyes, I realized that honesty was essential. "I just saw a message from a coworker of yours. It felt a bit flirtatious." Emily's expression shifted to one of surprise and concern. "What? Can you show me?" I felt a wave of anxiety crash over me. "No, it's not about that. It's just, it brought back memories of what happened with Mark, and I don't want to feel that way again." Emily took a step closer, her voice softening. "I understand why you'd feel that way, but I promise you, I'm committed to making this work. If there's anything I need to clarify or if you need reassurance, just tell me. I know, but it's hard. I want to trust you, and I want to believe that you're not going to hurt me again. But every little thing seems to trigger those old insecurities." She reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "Let's talk about this. I don't want you to feel like you're carrying this weight alone. We need to address these feelings together." As we sat down on the couch, I could feel the tension in my chest beginning to ease. "Okay, but I need to be honest. I feel like I'm always on edge, waiting for something to happen again." Emily nodded, her expression serious. "That's understandable. I've betrayed your trust, and it's going to take time to rebuild it. But I want you to know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. I want to create a new foundation for us, one built on honesty and openness." Her words resonated with me, and I knew she was genuinely trying. I took a deep breath, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within me again. "I want that too, but we have to keep talking about these things. I can't bury my feelings anymore." "Agreed," she said. "Let's promise to keep the lines of communication open. Whenever something bothers you, let's address it right away, even if it's uncomfortable." That night, as we lay in bed, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The journey to healing was far from over, but I knew we were both committed to the process. I realized that rebuilding trust wasn't just about avoiding past mistakes, it was about being vulnerable, honest, and willing to confront the uncomfortable feelings that came up along the way. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a quiet determination settling in my heart. We might stumble along the way, but together, we could navigate this path toward healing and rediscover the love that had once connected us so deeply. Chapter 8, Facing the Past. The next few weeks were filled with both progress and setbacks. Emily and I continued to attend therapy sessions and diligently worked on communicating our feelings. We made a conscious effort to be more present for each other, and I began to see glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with, thoughtful, funny, and deeply caring. But beneath those moments of connection lay the weight of the past, a shadow that seemed to loom larger at times. One Saturday morning, while we were lounging on the couch, I glanced over at Emily, who was scrolling through her phone. A sense of curiosity pulled at me, and I asked, "What are you looking at?" "Oh, just some old photos," she replied, her tone light. "I was reminiscing about a trip we took to the beach a few years ago." "Can I see?" I asked, my heart racing slightly. "Sure." She handed the phone over, and I scrolled through a few pictures of us laughing in the sun, our faces lit up with joy. Then I came across a photo of Emily with Mark. They were standing side by side, grinning as they posed with friends at a group outing. A sharp pang of jealousy shot through me, and I felt my heart rate quicken. "Do you have to keep those?" I asked, my voice more strained than I intended. Emily's expression shifted from nostalgia to concern. "What do you mean?" It's hard for me to see you with him, especially right now," I admitted, my throat tight. "Can't we focus on moving forward without reminders of the past?" She took a deep breath, nodding slowly. "I understand. I'll delete it if it bothers you. But just know that it was a different time in my life. I'm not that person anymore." The vulnerability in her voice softened some of my tension. "I appreciate that. It's just hard to reconcile the past with what we're trying to build now." "Let's make a pact," she suggested. "If we find something that triggers a memory for either of us, we'll talk about it instead of letting it fester." I nodded, feeling a sense of relief. "That sounds good. I want us to be able to address things instead of avoiding them." As the day went on, I could feel the weight of our conversation lingering. It was clear that the journey of healing would not be linear, there would be ups and downs as we navigated our feelings. Later that evening, we decided to have a movie night. As we settled in with popcorn and our favorite snacks, I felt a flicker of excitement. It had been a while since we had enjoyed something simple together. We picked a romantic comedy, hoping it would lighten the mood. Halfway through the film, as we laughed at the silly antics on the screen, Emily leaned her head on my shoulder. It felt nice to have her close, but a nagging feeling pulled at the edges of my mind. "Hey," I said, turning to her, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. What's on your mind?" I hesitated for a moment. "Do you ever think about what life would have been like if things hadn't gone the way they did with Mark?" She paused, her expression thoughtful. "I do. I think about how I took so many things for granted. I realized that I was running from my own issues, and I didn't fully appreciate what we had." "That's good to hear," I said, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. "I guess I just want to know that you understand the impact of your choices. It wasn't just a mistake, it affected both of us." Emily nodded, her eyes sincere. "I do understand, and I wish I could take it back. I never wanted to hurt you. You mean everything to me." As the movie ended, I turned off the TV, and we sat in comfortable silence for a moment. I could feel the warmth of her presence, and despite everything, a sense of peace washed over me. That weekend, we had planned to meet with some friends for a barbecue. The thought of socializing made me anxious, especially knowing that Mark would be there. It felt like a test of our progress, a chance to see if we could navigate our insecurities in a social setting. On the drive to the barbecue, I glanced at Emily. "Are you sure you're okay with this? I know it might be hard." She took a deep breath, her expression resolute. "I want to face it head on. I can't hide from my mistakes forever. We can do this together." When we arrived, the atmosphere was lively. Laughter and music filled the air, and the smell of grilled food wafted toward us as we walked up to the house. As we entered, I spotted Mark across the yard, chatting with a group of friends. My heart sank, and I felt a rush of anxiety. Emily seemed to sense my tension. "Just remember, I'm here with you. We're in this together." As the evening unfolded, I tried to focus on the conversations and the joy of being with friends, but my eyes kept drifting toward Mark. I watched him interact with others, and the memories of their time together flooded my mind. At one point, Mark approached us, a friendly smile on his face. "Hey, Emily. Good to see you." "Hi, Mark," she replied, her tone warm but neutral. I could feel my stomach twist as they exchanged pleasantries. As the conversation continued, I felt a pang of jealousy. It was difficult to see her interacting so easily with him. I forced a smile and engaged in small talk, but my mind was racing. After a few minutes, I excused myself to grab a drink, needing a moment to breathe. As I stepped away, I overheard Mark ask Emily about their old projects at work. My heart sank further. I took a deep breath, reminding myself of our commitment to openness and honesty. I needed to talk to Emily about how I was feeling, but at that moment, I wasn't sure how to express it without sounding insecure or jealous. When I returned, Emily was laughing at something Mark had said, and my heart clenched. I approached them, forcing a smile. "Hey, what's so funny?" Emily turned to me, her eyes brightening. "Mark was just telling a story about that time we got lost on our way to a client meeting. It was a disaster." I tried to join in the laughter, but my heart wasn't in it. "Sounds like a classic." Mark looked at me, sensing my tension. "Hey, man, it's all in the past, right?" "Yeah, just a story," I said, my voice clipped. As the evening wore on, I tried to shake off my discomfort, but it lingered like a cloud. I knew I needed to express my feelings to Emily later, but I wanted to choose my words carefully to avoid unnecessary conflict. Finally, as the night drew to a close, we made our way home. The car ride was quiet, the tension palpable. I could sense that Emily was aware of my unease, but neither of us spoke until we were safely inside our apartment. "Do you want to talk about what happened tonight?" she asked gently, her expression concerned. I took a deep breath, struggling to find the right words. I just felt uncomfortable. Seeing you with Mark like that, it brought up a lot of feelings I thought I was starting to overcome. Emily nodded, her eyes softening. "I understand. I didn't mean to make you feel that way. I thought we were handling things well, but I can see how that situation was difficult." "It's not your fault," I said quickly. "It's just hard for me to see you connect with him so easily. It makes me feel like I'm competing with a ghost." Her expression shifted to one of empathy. "I don't want you to feel like that. I chose you, and I'm committed to making this work. But I know I have to be more mindful of how these interactions affect you." "I appreciate that," I replied, feeling a weight lift slightly. "I just want to be able to navigate this together without it causing us more pain." "That's the goal," Emily said, stepping closer. "I want us to be open about our feelings, no matter how difficult it might be. We can do this together." We spent the rest of the evening talking openly, laying our cards on the table. We discussed our feelings, our insecurities, and our hopes for the future. It wasn't easy, but as we spoke, I could feel the bond between us growing stronger. By the end of our conversation, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We were still on a long road toward healing, but we were in it together, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. And for the first time in a while, I truly believed that we could emerge from this stronger than before. As we climbed into bed, I wrapped my arms around Emily, holding her close. "No matter what happens, I want you to know that I love you," I whispered. "I love you too," she replied, her voice filled with warmth. "And I'll do everything I can to make this work." In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. While the journey ahead would be challenging, we had each other, and that was a start. Together, we could face the shadows of the past and work toward a brighter future.